Okay, it looks like we're going. Welcome back to S&M on Sci-Fi. This is S.
And this is him.
And we actually got a couple of other people here in studio, we'll say, with us. So you might hear a couple other voices, and we'll introduce them as needed. Anyway, it's actually been a while for us.
Yeah, I think over a month.
Right? It has. I mean, we've been kind of on hiatus, and as much as I'd like to do this just all the time.
Yeah.
We actually have lives and we have jobs that actually pay
budgets and
money, and coincidentally we actually kind of work on polar opposite schedules, so getting together is a Herculean task. But anyway, we're together now. We're going to watch Elysium with Matt Damon, right?
Now I say Elysium. Why do you go with Elysium?
Because I keep hearing Elysium.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Potato, tomato. It doesn't really matter. But anyway,
but I had not actually heard it pronounced by anybody else, so it's interesting to hear.
Yeah, I've always heard it in my mind, Elysium. Okay. Elysium, I guess it really doesn't matter.
That also goes to show that I haven't seen a trailer of it yet.
Well, see, I have seen trailers for it, and it looked like a fantastic sci-fi movie for us to do. But we can talk about that at leisure. But anyway, it's. Well, what the hell? Let's start out the gate because, Will, we know you're listening. Mr. Wheaton, if you hear our shows, please come on by. And we will keep inviting you. However, I am not going to be like the stalker type guy on the social media for you. So...
Did he have a stalker?
I don't know. But I don't want to take that role.
Someone's got to fill that
role. Someone's got to fill it, right.
But not us.
Not us, because, we want him to show up and watch a movie with us. But anyway, it's been a while. Why don't we catch up? What have you been doing? What's up?
I watched all of the old episodes of Eureka.
Oh, great show.
Do the slam dunk, get it. I think,
binge watch it, get through it.
Binge watch. Yeah. That's the new phrase for it, isn't it?
And to me, it's fitting, really. Because that's what you're doing. You're taking in as absolutely much as you can. I like it.
You know what? I have to say, and I'm a little older than probably most of our audience, having grown up where you had to wait for the next episode, and usually you missed it because your parents had something going on.
Right.
So you caught, episodic, eclectic episodes, really, and you never got a full continuity of anything. Binge watching is by far more fun.
It is. Well, also in the time period that you're talking about, that was before we had the ability to watch all the episodes. We can only watch one episode here and there. So you saw a lot more television that was a lot more episodic. Each episode was a self-contained in and of itself. You didn't need to watch the entire series. Now, with the advent of awesome technology, now you can have entire series of one long connected story and not miss anything. So that's kind of cool.
I think it's a transition to a more soap operic, because soap operas always were like that, and of course it held audiences for years. I mean,
all the housewives that weren't working.
And they said, why don't we do this with nighttime television? And they figured out finally they could because of, first VCR recording, and DVRs and so on.
Right.
But now with Netflix and Amazon and other instant download options.
Internet in general,
man. You can do everything all at once.
Absolutely. And I love it. You're talking about binge watching. I've been binge watching the reboot, the Sci-Fi Channel reboot of Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, okay.
Now
that came out about 10 years ago, right?
2002, 3, I don't know.
That
2004.
Would be 10 years ago.
2004? Yeah, about 10 years ago. It ran for 4 seasons. I'm currently on season 4, just about to wrap it up. And when it initially aired, I did watch the first season in its entirety every week that it came out. And the first season is fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. It's gorgeous. And if you don't watch anything else, Battlestar Galactica, watch the opening miniseries. It's like the first 3 or 4 episodes. And it's kind of like a made-for-TV movie type thing. Oh, it's fantastic. It ends at a good point for you to never watch it anymore, But the rest of the season carries on from that. Season 2, I watched initially when it came out, about halfway through, and I died. I was done. That was my text messaging, by the way. Yes, it's the Old Spice whistle. But about halfway through, I stopped because it was bad. It went downhill fast. It was just not good.
Now this is season 2.
Right. So now that I came across my Netflix queue, I started watching it thinking, all right, I'm going to get through it because I've heard season 3 and season 4 are fantastic. So I get through season 2, and it was actually worse than I remember the first go around. I get through that. Season 3 started to pick up a little bit, started to get back. The problem I had was the show got away from what Battlestar Galactica should have been, which is the fleet in space running from the Cylons. And they got away from that.
You know what? I feel the same way about Eureka, and actually I think a lot of shows do this.
Yeah.
They have a great first season because it's about the things going on.
There's a lot of character
But
development.
as the audience falls in love with the characters, the show becomes all about the characters, and there's just distractions happening in their life.
Big Bang Theory did it.
And I just lose interest when that happens because that's not what made me fall in love with the show.
I want to know, because I've seen Eureka the entire way through, except for season 5. I haven't seen season 5 yet. Season 2 really didn't do a lot for me of Eureka. I don't know about you.
I didn't. I really liked. Okay, let me start back. Episode 1, I watched about 9 months ago. Saw about 15 minutes of it and said, this isn't for me. About 3 months ago, I said, all right, I got nothing else to watch. Let's go back and revisit Eureka.
Do it again, right.
And I'll just I'll force myself through. It's kind of like a bad book sometimes. You got to get through chapter 1, and it gets better.
Right.
And it did. I really started liking the show.
Season 3 for me was probably the best.
And then the same thing happened. Season 2 went downhill. Season 3 came in, and some of the characters that I really liked, they dropped.
Changed.
And the
Andy
people that I
the
didn't
android,
care so much,
yeah.
they didn't get rid of the people I wanted to see.
They
go.
got rid of Taggart, and they shouldn't have.
At least they knew to bring him back.
Right.
A few times.
Well, and long story short, with me for Battlestar Galactica, I don't agree with everybody that said season 3 and 4 were fantastic. Better than season 2, yeah, but there was this big thing talking about the final 5 Cylons. There's 12 Cylon models. They all look like humans. We've figured out who 7 of them are, but there's a final 5. You know, what's the big secret? And who are these final 5? Well, I called it right out of the gate. It's going to be 5 guys that we've seen the entire series. They're going to be 5 main characters. And yeah, that's exactly what happened. I was like, ah. So I only have like 10 episodes left of season 4, so I'm going to finish it just to get through it. But the next series I'm going to watch, and I think you should as well, is Farscape.
You know what? I kind of did the same thing with Farscape. I got a little further into it. I got about halfway through season 1.
Yeah. And
it was, to me, it was a bad version of Next Gen.
Oh, see,
And I know there's a lot of Farscape people out there that love it and would hate me for saying that, but that's how I felt.
Well, and I'm one of those people.
They didn't have the budget for a big cast. They didn't have a budget for a big set, so all the sets look the same. They look cheap to me, and the special effects are minimal, and the scripting is so obvious to me. I had a hard time watching it.
Wow, I am completely... See, this is why I do a show with you, because I am completely opposite of that show. That show, to me, is the only other sci-fi series that I like better than Farscape was Firefly.
Okay.
Farscape for me... Now, granted, I didn't watch every episode. I did watch for the first 2 seasons, season and a half, and it was dynamite, just pure gold. First off, it's a Jim Henson production. So therefore, there's a lot of puppeteering to be had. And guess who does all the puppeteering?
Frank Oz.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a guess, by the way.
It has... Farscape, for me, had probably the best sci-fi villain in a TV series of all time.
Well, maybe I didn't get that far. Who was the villain?
Scorpius.
Yeah, I did not get that far into it.
He's a half Sebastian, half Scaran.
Don't swear at me.
Great series. But anyway, last series I really want to talk about real quick, Doctor Who.
Woo! Yeah. we both like Doctor Who.
Doctor Who, I am obsessed. And I mean, it's bad. Do you know the Kevin Bacon degrees of separation?
Yeah.
He makes a claim that he's worked with every Hollywood actor. I did the degrees of Bacon. You can go to Google, type in the celebrity's name, space, Bacon number, and it'll give you that degree of separation from Kevin Bacon for the celebrity.
That is interesting. I probably won't do that, but I like the concept.
I did it for all of the current of the we'll talk about later
reboots
of Doctor Who, the 2001 starting on series, and they all have a degree of separation from Kevin Bacon of 2.
Wow, that's pretty minimal.
They all worked with someone who worked with Kevin Bacon. So
I do want to comment. I started rewatching Hero series, and I got through season 2, which was the 2 seasons I liked, and I've already seen them all, so I stopped there deliberately. But
Right.
Christopher Eccleston
Yeah.
is in Heroes.
Yes.
And now, when I first watched it, I didn't see, it was before I was rewatching all the Doctor Who's, the more recent Doctor Who's.
Right.
And wow, it was cool to see him.
It's
like
the-
Doctor Who.
It's like Doctor
Here's
Who.
the TARDIS.
Well, and every time I see David Tennant somewhere, I fangirl. It's like, oh my god. But anyway, do you consider John Hurt's Doctor as a legitimate Doctor? Are we on Doctor number 12 or are we on number 11? About to be 12 and or 13, depending on how you.
You know, if the show portrays him as a Doctor, who am I to say he's not?
I thought he did well. I thought he fit.
I like him as an actor, and the script was a good one, in my opinion.
Yep.
So I can't fault the script. I can't fault the
Right.
acting. It engaged me as far as an audience. I want to see what's going on next.
Right. I also
So-
liked how they explained the Time War. We finally kind of
Yeah.
get some of a resolution there. By the way, those of you that have not watched Doctor Who, get out from under the rock that you live in
Yeah.
and join the world, because that's another thing. Here is the first television series that I know that not only every American in the country loves, but every European who knows the show loves Doctor Who, and especially this current remastering, revision, redoing.
Let me ask some of our additional participants here. I got with me one of my sons. His name's Jaden, and one of my nephews. His name is Brandon.
Hey guys.
I believe you guys are also Doctor Who fans. Do you have any comments there?
Oh, hey, my son's coming to give me night-nights. Night-night, buddy. I love you.
And he's too underage to mention his name.
We call him Short Guy.
Daddy,
What's up, dude?
children there.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, hold on a second. All right, sorry about that. I had to go put my son to bed. Anyway, we're about to have these two guys.
Who.
Yeah.
Doctor Who. So, just to help you guys out, a specific question. Who is your favorite Doctor of any of the Doctors?
Matt Smith.
Matt Smith. Okay, fair enough.
Wow.
All right, I don't know names.
Just say,
I think the
a
12th
number.
Doctor.
12th
I
Doctor.
like the new one that came in the new episode. I was a big fanatic for that episode.
okay, so
Old
that
one
would
right
be who we were just talking
John
about.
Hurt, right.
Exactly. Now, I hope you know, he's only the Doctor in that one episode.
Right. I love how he enters the entire universe on one episode, and everybody's going to accept him as it, and it's kind of interesting. But yeah. Oh, wow. Matt Smith, really?
What episodes do you like best?
There's too many to name.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with David Tennant.
David Tennant. Okay.
Yeah, only because of 3 episodes. The Library and The Forest of the Dead, which is a 2-part series, and Blake.
Okay.
And that's why. Those 2 alone. I get Tom Baker. I mean, everybody loves Tom Baker from the old days, but David Tennant.
Yeah. I'm going to go old school and say Tom Baker.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Okay.
there's just so many episodes that he's in that I like.
He was
quantities.
71 to 70. No. I don't even know when.
You mean what years?
Yeah.
Yeah, early 70s to late 70s.
Early. Okay, so he was there for a while. He's
Yeah,
actually the
I
longest
believe it
running
was 8
doctor.
years.
Wasn't
Off
he
the
the
top of my
longest
head.
running doctor of all
Yes.
time? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Now, current series, I think David Tennant, but I really like Eccleston as an actor, and it launched the series again.
Yep.
We're going to say reboot, and I want to talk about that.
Yes,
phrase, if you
yes.
don't
I
mind.
know
We
you wanted to
jump-
talk about the term
jump over.
reboot for.
Now, in a general sense, you take something locked up, you reboot it, and it works again. I get it.
Mhm.
But you and I were both have an engineering computer
Mhm.
background. If you take a 1995 computer with that kind of hardware and OS and you reboot it, you do not get something that has modern hardware
No.
and modern OS on
We
it.
call that upgrade.
Yes. It is a major upgrade. And the way they refer, a lot of people say, oh, I love how they reboot. No, it's not a reboot, it's a reimagination.
But see, I can understand why they would call it a reboot rather than an upgrade, because just because it's a new version doesn't make it better. For instance,
that's the implication.
understandable, but for instance, the latest Star Trek series
Mhm.
that they're doing, the first one I thought did really well because they didn't try to follow a storyline.
Yeah.
And then the second one failed miserably. So I can't call it an upgrade.
So it was a reboot.
Right.
In the worst sense. 1995 all over
right,
again.
and the virus just kept going.
Corruption at the very core
Exactly,
processor
it was horrible.
itself.
Oh my god. Well, okay, nothing against Benedict Cumberbatch because him playing Khan, kind of fun to watch. I think the movie in general is just badly written, and for them to try to recreate in a new image probably the best Star Trek villain of all time, no, it doesn't work. I mean, I'm into villains. That's why I watch movies. I love villains. By the way, Elysium has
Sigourney Weaver?
No.
Was it-
We watched her in Trancers.
Helen Hunt.
Is it Helen? Oh, Helen Hunt was in Trancers, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Because that's not her in this one. This is
You're thinking Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster. Was
Okay.
Jodie Foster in?
No.
It was Helen Hunt. Okay, my bad. Anyway, Jodie Foster is a villain in Elysium, so that'll be.
And I haven't seen anything that she's been in since Flight. I think Flight Plan.
Flight Plan,
Yeah.
right? Which, not
So-
a horrible movie. Wasn't bad. I mean, it's typical Michael Crichton.
Mm.
No, Michael Crichton didn't write that. Never mind. I'm thinking Timeline. By the way, horrible movie from a book. Timeline. Anyway,
Could you mind if I real quick mention them
yeah,
since we talked reboots?
absolutely.
Typically, also people say reboot and they mean same series, same people involved in, or at least
Actor,
storyline.
characters, right?
I think Elysium kind of qualifies as a reboot in the type of meaning that most people are use when they say movies. However, it obviously wasn't a reboot from an earlier
Right.
version.
There's no previous Elysium.
But we have, and I know you and I both kind of looked at this a little bit, other series or other stories that did extremely similar. For example, the original Star Trek, episode 21 from season 3, did the title episode was The Cloud Minders. The Cloud Minders. And it was people on a planet. Now, in this particular case, they lived underground. Their life sucked.
Right.
And then there were people up in a cloud city, and their life was awesome.
Fantastic. Let's go.
Is this not Elysium?
That is exactly what Elysium is. And actually, that's another movie I watched recently, Upside Down.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get your head around the physics involved with Upside Down, because it didn't work, the physics just made no sense to me whatsoever.
Literally, the worlds were upside down.
There was
from each
two
other.
worlds upside
Yeah.
down from each other, and matter from one planet was attracted to the one planet, and matter from the other planet. For instance, if you got closer to the other planet, you didn't fall to that planet. You kept falling toward your planet.
Yeah.
So it was a little weird. Like, it didn't make sense to me in that regard. But the movie was enjoyable enough to kind of overlook that. It was fun. But you had a down below and up top.
I'm even going to throw in the reboot of Total Recall 2012.
Yeah, see, exactly.
You have people
Exactly.
on one side of the world, it's Earth in this case, and then people on the other
The
side of the
side,
world, and you have a diversity
Absolutely.
of
Even though
economics.
the original Total Recall did not have that.
Well, they did, but it was different planets.
That's true. Well, not really, though. Because Earth was actually pretty well off. And you had multiple classes on Earth. I mean, that was obvious.
It was more of a class. Yeah, I agree with you. It was more
You
of
know
a
what I
class
mean?
thing.
It was kind of like what we have now. We do have classes. I think it was just a little more exaggerated there, but not to the point where there's separate physical locations. For instance, did you ever see the movie In Time with Justin Timberlake?
No, I did not.
Okay, that movie was a lot of fun for me because it actually has a sci-fi feel. We might have to do the movie.
Okay.
They can live forever, assuming they have the time, and you get time by working. Time is used as a currency.
Right, okay.
But anyway, yes,
Yes, I've seen the movie and I totally loved it.
Timeline?
In Time.
In Time.
There were different classes in the movie. They didn't really clarify how those work because he jumped quite a few classes.
Well,
He
it's
skipped most of all of them.
the class system is based on currency. Currency is time.
So the more time you have, the higher class you are?
Right. Exactly. So that's kind of following the same lines. By the way, first movie where I saw Justin Timberlake act, fantastic. Anyway, got another one.
So does that mean that if you go to jail, you just waste half of your life? You have to go work it all off?
That's kind of interesting because they didn't outline that. What happens if you go to jail? If you serve time, can you just get it marked off and be done?
That would be 25 years to life? Wait.
Ding!
25 or to life. You can't do both.
Right, exactly. So, but yeah, no, I think you're right. There's several dystopian type movies. Gattaca, probably one of the most famous movies of all time. Great movie for the record. Yeah. I love Gattaca.
Light sci-fi, but definitely sci-fi.
Yeah, absolutely. It was more of a sociology approach. What would happen
Well, that's what the whole theory is between this concept, right? Yeah. It's you have groups of people that are separated by something, in this case economics, and that's usually what it is some kind of economic separation.
Mm-hmm. Class warfare to the extreme. To use modern terms. Anyway, I'm ready to watch a movie. How about you?
Yeah. What are we in, like 10, 20 minutes?
Yeah, we're way too...
So apologize to those of you that are used to our short 5-minute intros, but here we go.
Well, we just wanted to catch up a bit. Anyway, before we do, what are we drinking?
Oh yeah.
Because you came up with this witch's brew that I'm going to need you to explain.
So we got a beer.
A beer.
And with that beer, I have mixed 50-50 lime juice, lemon juice, and then a splash of Louisiana hot sauce.
And I'm going to tell you, it's actually going down quite smooth. In fact, mine's almost gone.
It's easy to drink.
It is.
For you people that like things sour and don't necessarily like beer, I say try this.
Absolutely. But anyway, on with the movie.
Now we're back.
Now we are back. All right.
First impressions.
Okay. I really do kind of have two minds about this movie. First mind is that the visuals were pretty good. Mm-hmm. The technology that they invented for this movie, pretty darn awesome. And the bad guy, not who's her nose?
Jodie Foster.
Not Jodie Foster, but Kruger.
The character named Kruger.
The character named Kruger, awesome.
Yeah, I will
But
agree with
as
that
far as the
right
rest
off
of the story and innovation, yeah, I kind of have issues. I'm going to take some issues with it.
I want to say it was a fun movie.
It was.
It was exciting.
Absolutely.
I think they borrowed a ton of material from a lot of different sources.
You and I pointed out through the entire movie. But to be fair, that movie did have me on the edge of the couch staring at the screen going, no way. I mean, seriously, it was fun. You're right. Get a couple of beers, have some popcorn. You're going to love this movie. You really are. But
hey, now we want to point out this movie is rated R, so
yes,
we had to supervise minors, and I watched them, and they watched the movie. It was perfect.
It was absolutely right. And I think really the reason it was rated R is because there wasn't not only violence, but it was pretty graphic violence.
Yeah.
And the language,
which it was typical gratuitous language.
Absolutely, to the point where it felt forced.
Yeah, I agree with that.
To me,
they
could have written the same lines without the language, and it would have been just fine.
Now we pointed this out. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, they kind of alternate between English and a few other languages.
Spanish, I think, was a big one.
The only language I heard them swear in was English.
English, right? You didn't hear punta or anything like that.
Gosh, you never know who's listening. Seriously,
it's a podcast. We can do anything we want.
Yeah, but you got a point. I'm just kidding.
All right, let's start at the beginning. In that the idea of this, it's a totally dystopian future. Mm-hmm. There is a caste system. There's the Earth. People live on Earth whose job. Now, granted, we are only shown L.A.
Right.
We are only shown L.A. and L.A.'s job is meant to do nothing more than support Elysium.
Which all we saw them really do was build robots.
Which are also police officers there in L.A. Mm-hmm. Right. But from the L.A. perspective, we're meant to understand that Earth itself, in general, is the subservient group to Elysium, the space station. Quick side note, space station design, kind of cool, except I do kind of have one issue. It's physics issue. The space station did rotate to bring gravity in. I get it. Centripetal force creates gravity. I got it. On the outer ring. But you'll notice there was two rings. There was an inner ring and there was an outer ring. I want to know if there was anyone on the inner ring. They never identify it.
And your gravity would have been way off.
It would have been, and not only that, it was half the distance to the center of the spacecraft. So you would be looking at least 25% more because gravity is 50% less or 25% less. Yeah, whatever the math. It's a funky math. But gravity went a lot more on the inner ring.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know if there's anyone in there. But that's just a quick little, whatever.
They also portrayed the, I'm going to call it a satellite, whatever you want to call it, where the Elysium, it looked to be geosynchronous.
Yes.
Which didn't make sense at all.
No. You would want that thing orbiting.
Yeah.
Well.
And
would you? Would it matter?
Well, they showed it spinning, which is how you'd probably potentially generate its own gravity.
Right.
Its own false gravity, but centrifugal force, as you said.
Right.
If it was stuck in Earth's gravity, it would have to be stuck in Earth's gravity well to rotate the sun correctly. Otherwise, it need propulsion.
That's true because
So if it's using Earth's gravity to keep it so it goes around the sun, then it's going to have to use Earth's gravity also to maintain its orbit.
That's true. Yeah.
Not being an expert in satellites, you have a lifespan of satellites. Generally, they have to correct every once in a while.
Right.
So if it's not geosynchronous, then it needs a way to correct its
Absolutely.
orbit.
So that's kind of interesting. That is, and honestly, in the movie, I don't think they described it as being geosynchronous because you actually kind of see it come around the Earth and see a sunrise and all sorts of funky stuff. So yeah, but overall, that space station design did remind me a lot of 2001: Space Odyssey, and that actually brings me right into they borrowed a lot of material. I'm going to start with you. What do you think they borrowed from? What was the first thing off the top of your head?
Ringworld.
Yeah.
We saw a little bit. I said Spider-Man for spider catchers.
Yep. Yeah.
Not many of you may get that reference, but I hope some of you do.
Watch the movie, you'll get it.
It definitely borrowed spacecrafts from a variety of shows.
Oh my
I
God.
saw a little bit of a Emperor's from Star Wars.
Yep.
The Emperor's shuttlecraft.
Yep.
You mentioned a few. Go ahead.
I mentioned Terminator. There was the hovercraft thing that they have in the Terminator series, and everybody knows what they are. Mm-hmm. We see them in every movie. To me, the ship that the bad guy Kruger flies on, that's exactly what it looks like. But
our younger members, while the movie was playing, I believe said Halo. I think you said Halo.
Halo,
as well.
absolutely, because one of them looked like a pelican. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. The space station itself again looked like Halo. It reminded me of a Halo ring that we see in the
supplemental body stuff. I want to say Aliens 2.
Yeah,
Sigourney Weaver was walking around that giant thing.
Right.
But you also see a similar setup in other movies.
Absolutely, but the funny thing is, nothing is coming off the top of my head where you have a exoskeleton on the body and.
Terminator? Not Terminator, excuse me. Predator.
Predator,
something like that.
Yeah, maybe. It seems like a familiar deal.
You got something to say?
The exoskeleton reminds me a lot of the suit from the main antagonist in Iron Man 2.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
It reminds me
Whiplash.
of Mickey Rourke's suit in Iron Man 2. Good call. Absolutely, it does. Oh, absolutely.
How about any other reminders from the call-outs? We talked about the plot at the beginning, and it was exactly what we thought.
Exactly what we thought. It was two separate societies. It reminded me of every other movie that's ever been made about two separate societies. Now, you know what? We'll talk about the end of the movie in a little bit because I do take issue with one specific point, but we can go on from there. How about the protagonist here, Matt Damon as the character Max? Max is dosed with radiation, has 5 days to live, has decided to take it on himself to get to Elysium. By the way, Elysium has the means to cure any and all and every...
Except one thing, which you do find out at the end of the movie,
right.
literally.
Right. But Elysium has the ability to cure any and all diseases, ailments, broken
Physical
bones.
damage.
Everything from leukemia...
As
you
long as you have
name
a
it.
brain.
So
we got a comment here, side comment.
As long as your brain is okay.
Well, as long as that's a good point. As long as your brain is okay, and we actually see that in the Kruger character. By the way, I'm going to bring it up right now because it was so awesome. Kruger,
Now, hold on. Obviously, we're giving some spoilers. There are some pretty nice special effects in this movie. So if you want a good, fun surprise, go watch the movie before you listen to the rest of this.
Yeah, stop now. Watch the movie. Anyway, there's a moment when Kruger. By the way, Kruger is the true antagonist in this movie, not Jodie Foster. Although Jodie Foster is one that was initially pulling the strings. I get it. But to me, Kruger was the better bad guy here. Kruger captures Max, and they're on a boat, they're on a ship, craft, whatever. And a grenade goes off. I won't go into details as to why the grenade goes off, because honestly, that little scene was pretty cool. It was pretty awesome. The grenade literally goes off in Kruger's face. Kruger's face is gone. I mean, destroyed. And you even see a wonderful effect later showing just how bad his face was, but his brain was fine. But,
which makes sense from the visuals.
Well, it makes sense from the visuals. They shove him in the machine that cures him, and they say brain intact, facial reconstruction in progress. And even the facial reconstruction progress was a neat effect. And that's actually one thing I'm going to give very big ranks for on this movie. The effects were good.
I'm going to make a call out to another movie, Fifth Element.
Fifth Element, absolutely. It looked exactly like...
The reconstruction.
Yes, of
the Fifth Element.
What was her name? Lilu.
Yeah.
Lilu, Mila Jovovich. By the way, you see her naked in the movie. Fantastic. Anyway.
Not in this one.
No.
Unless I missed it on a poster or something.
But anyway, Max decides that he needs to go to Elysium to fix himself because he got dosed by some radiation.
And he's willing to do anything to do it.
For it. So he takes on a job from his buddy Spider, who is basically a leader in the criminal underground. I'm really going to think that's kind of what he does.
Yeah. Really he also smuggles people to Elysium.
And
not successfully, but he tries.
Right. Spider is the one that has the ticket for him to get to Elysium to cure himself. So he goes to Spider and says, I will do anything. Spider tells him, I need you to get information from a very important guy. And the guy that they pick, that actually Max picks, is, I don't remember the actor, but he's the boss of the corporation that Max works for. So,
I picking up from there, so there's some major coincidences that happen right at this moment.
Right. Yep.
Script-wise. You have that coming
big
together
coincidences,
for Max,
I might add. Big coincidences.
So he needs to get to Elysium to repair himself.
Right.
It just so happens that this guy is the one that gave Max's death sentence and said, don't bother helping him. Let him die. And here's the major coincidence, because that's coincidence enough, right?
Right.
But here's the major coincidence, is Jodie Foster's character and this guy, call his name, I want to say... Carlisle, yeah, that's right, have designed a coup to take over Elysium.
Right, yep.
And it just so happens that he now has all the important data to reboot the entire system in his head, Carlisle's head, and this is the guy they're going to hit to try to steal the information, so they can, basically they're trying to do an electronic bank heist.
That's exactly what it was. They needed to do a bank heist, but the problem was Max's and Spider's characters do not know what this guy has in his head, and they pull off the transfer of data almost flawlessly. Honestly, it worked out really well in their favor until Kruger arrived after the facts.
Now, even though that was a bit of a big coincidence, I will say in favor of this movie, one thing I liked about Max's character, and you asked me about how I liked him as a protagonist, he was kind of an everyman.
Yep.
Now, he's an orphan, and the woman that's raising him kind of tells him he's special, trying to,
a nun that raised him, right.
And so, beside the nun telling him he's special, which I can see happening to an orphan, and I don't know, I've never been an orphan, but, as they're trying to build him up, I think, is how it was.
Right. Create this damaged character.
He's an everyman. He could be anybody, but he goes on to do something truly spectacular.
But here's the thing. Here's the problem I have with that, is he didn't do it for anybody. He did it for himself. He wasn't trying to help anybody at all.
So you think he's not a protagonist?
No. Well,
He's
he's
selfish?
he's set up as the protagonist, yes, but his intentions were completely selfish until he learns
Right.
that the love interest is now involved.
But still, okay, I agree with you. But at the very end, it's still a selfish reason because he's trying to please someone he likes.
That's a good point. And actually, you see that at the very end of the movie. Spoiler alert: Max dies. At the end of the movie,
Because this is the one uncurable thing.
right? There's one incoming. What happens is at the end of the movie that, by the way, Jodie Foster dies actually relatively early in the movie. I was expecting her to survive a little longer, but
4/5 of the way into
right, exactly, yeah, at the hands of Kruger, which I thought was brilliant. And I will get into detail about Kruger as to why I like him as a bad guy in a minute. Anyway, at the end of the movie, Max decides that the data he needs to upload will actually save the daughter of his love interest, and therefore sacrifices himself. He didn't do it for him. He did it for him initially, but he realized that he was lost. So he did it for the girl he loved and her daughter, didn't give a crap about the rest of the population that he actually ended up helping. Didn't care about them. It just happened that the program included the rest of them. Didn't care. But he did sacrifice himself for the greater good.
So, as a question to you, projecting here into the minds of the writers and the producers and directors, if there had not been the love interest, do you think he would have saved himself and let everyone else suffer?
Yeah, I do. I think he would have saved himself, gone back to Earth, and continued his life as normal.
We have a comment?
Well, to tell you the truth, the reason why he died because the only way to get the data out of him was to kill him.
That's actually a very
what
good
Kruger
point.
had to do.
But
they
he
had.
he was willing to let it happen.
Right, he could have put himself in the machine and healed himself.
Right.
He didn't have to let them...
No, he didn't have to give the data at all. He didn't have to give it at all. But it looks like we have another comment also.
You know, going back to the one guy, I forgot his name. Was it Carlisle?
Yeah.
You know, nobody really had to die. It's the fact that he made it so that if you were to extract it out of a person that wasn't authorized, you had to kill them first. So it's really just this guy's fault.
That's actually a very good point because Carlisle, the one that was staging the coup, set up a program and downloaded it to his head and set it up to where if it was extracted, person holding the data was killed. That seems out of character for a big-time company CEO. He was a very arrogant bastard. I mean, that's why he was there. He didn't care about the people under him. It seems like that he cared more about himself. And if that was the case, why would he even contemplate himself dying if someone else got this data? It'd be more a character for him. Someone else got the data. I'm just going to squirm my way out of this.
And even if you extrapolate a little bit and say he's trying to prevent Jodie Foster's character from taking it from him, she would just download it and then
she would kill him anyway, right?
She would get the information first. So
Right.
there's really no protection. It just simply means to the story's end.
No, right. It was written in as the story's end, but okay.
It sets Max up to potentially be a good guy and not be the jerk that we're accusing him of. But you know what?
He was a jerk at the beginning. At the end, he turned out to be a good guy.
Well, you know what?
Because he was a car thief. I understand that times are hard.
Reformed car thief.
Yes, he was. I understand that on Earth times are tough. I get it because we're in a shithole. Meanwhile, Elysium is up there doing great and fantastic things, and you do what you have to do to survive. And honestly, if I was put in his position and to make money, to live, to survive, I had to steal cars, I'm going to be stealing cars.
I do want to say, given the Carlisle point that was just made, assuming that still took place in the storyline, even if there wasn't the girlfriend and the sick child at the end, I still think he would have given up the data because even if he had healed himself without a new regime in charge, they would have just killed him anyway. Or who knows what.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, let's talk about the protagonist. And I don't want to talk about Jodie Foster because Jodie Foster in the character was the main character that was pulling the strings. She activated the character Kruger to to do all her bidding for her. But Kruger was mad, was pissed. And I think he kind of went rogue. And Kruger is actually the one that kills Jodie Foster's character. But let's talk about Kruger and why I think, as a bad guy, as a nemesis, I think he's awesome. I mean, that's what I do. I look for the bad guys in movies. That's really what my focus is. This guy as a bad guy was phenomenal. He was equally matched against Max. He was cold. He had sense enough that he didn't want the little girl to see that he was going to inflict violence on her mother, and then did inflict violence on her mother after the girl wasn't watching.
Right.
You know, he knew exactly who and what he was, and he was happy about it. That's what made him so good to me. Aside from the accent in the movie, by the way, the accent of Kruger in the movie was a bastard to get through.
And I don't know how much training they gave her, but I didn't care for Jodie Foster's accent. It sounded a lot forced.
You actually brought it up. The on Earth, granted, the only portion of Earth that we actually experience is L.A.
Yeah.
So everybody speaks Spanish.
And English.
And English.
But not a mixture. They just alternate.
Right, and they alternate between the two. There's some subtitles, but anyway. Meanwhile, we get to Elysium. Everybody has a French accent.
And they spoke French.
And they spoke French.
And English, but alternating.
Right.
And we're like, wait a second, what are they saying about French and Spanish? What's the commentary here?
No.
Plus, and it was, I did not make the movie, I'm just observing.
Right.
The servants in Elysium were black robots. And all the people were pretty much white. Not all of them, but most of them.
There was a very... Not only was there a specific group of people that made it to Elysium, I actually think they did decide based on race for a large part of it. I mean...
You mean... Well, do you think they were trying to show something for the movie, or deliberately choosing a majority of Caucasians
for the movie? I think for a movie like this, because they are trying to establish or trying to point out a class system. I think they're trying to point to that. And let's face it, classes sometimes, if not always, initially are based on race. Blacks in this country started as slaves. Take from that what you will, but that's exactly what happens. And I think that's exactly kind of the point they're trying to make there.
Now, they set this in late 21st century, so we're talking next 80 years at the most.
Right. Yep.
80 to 90, I guess.
Which is amazing to me that we can build a space station big enough to house... God, how big was that space station?
Oh, it had to be huge, yeah.
Yeah, you could hold thousands and thousands of people, obviously, but anyway.
So we're not looking that far in the future,
No.
but I don't know. I'm not going to predict our societal changes, but it seems to me that there's a huge equality shift happening.
Yep.
And it's sad to think that another 80 years goes by and it didn't shift as much as this movie portrayed.
Right.
Because this is really a commentary of maybe where we're at now.
Where we're at now, but you actually said it in your biography. You take any story that you have now, whether it's a class system, it's whatever the story is, put a sci-fi spin on it. And all you have to do to put a sci-fi spin is put it in the future, put different technology, put time travel, do whatever. You still have the same story that applies to today. And I think that's what they did with Elysium. I think they tried to point to the class system and how bad it can be. It's the same thing they did with Gattaca. I mean, they pointed out why this is a bad idea. The episode of Star Trek that you pointed out, they pointed out why it's a bad idea to keep doing this.
I do think, though, overall, I enjoyed this movie, and I liked their spin on it.
Absolutely. I had fun watching it. Another point I want to bring up is the technology involved. Honestly, the technology that Kruger brought out, he brought out all sorts of fun, neat toys. He brought out, I'm going to call it future ninja stars. They honestly looked like ninja stars. He was able to throw them out without necessarily needing to aim, and they hit their target. And at the push of a button, or him saying so, whatever the hell the case was, they exploded, thereby exploding whatever they attached themselves to. In this case, bodies.
I noticed that we had some some commentary here.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry. Now you got me on two of them. One of them, this is very historically accurate as well, because think of them as... No, it's just something. Think of them as people coming in from out of the country. None of them are going to be white, because that's what we are. Except they picture us as very rich, very nice. That was their dream, and they're coming in. And that's basically what they're trying to do, because they don't have access.
Absolutely. That's actually a very great point. I can look at that as the story of the immigration from Mexicans into the United States. The illegal immigrants.
The ones that weren't already here.
Right.
Before the white people.
Well, I can understand that story being the case of a Mexican immigrant trying to get to the United States. That actually makes a lot of sense. It looks like we have another point here.
Now that we're on the subject of technology, I would like to bring up the question as to how they're keeping Elysium lit up. Because the entire ring is lit up at all times. And the inner ring doesn't have any light. The supports don't have light. I mean, they have a big wall on the outside, so they're not getting any light from the sun. Where's this light coming from?
You wanted to. That's a good point, and you wanted to jump to some technology that
I did.
I think while we're kind of hitting that, I had some exceptions to the technology, even though I thought it was portrayed in a cool way. For example, they have a Elysium rocket defense system that is essentially
Earthbound.
It's essentially Kruger grabbing a rocket launcher and firing
out of a disguised car.
Yeah. Now, I have no idea why they had to have Kruger. And he points it too. Why bother? Because the missiles have to curve around a whole lot to get to the ships. They're, literally miles and miles away.
Hundreds of miles away. What I want to know.
You couldn't have an automated system that did that out of some mountainside or something?
All right, for those that don't quite understand, and you got to watch the movie to get it, early in the movie, a group of illegal immigrants, that's what I'm going to call them, illegal immigrants board a couple of shuttles and head to Elysium to...
Well, they are illegal because they're not citizens.
They're not citizens of Elysium. They're headed there to try and find a better life. And the space station itself, I decided, does not have defensive capabilities, does not have weapons. So Jodie Foster gets on the interstellar space telephone line, calls up Kruger, and says, I need you to shoot them down.
Literally. This is how they do it.
This is exactly how they do it. They place an interstellar phone call from the space station to Earth and says, I need you to shoot them down. Kruger goes over to a disguised car that's housing these rocket launcher that launches 4 rockets, and honestly he didn't have to aim because they guided themselves, which I want to know, where was the rockets getting their information? That's what I want to know.
They're smart rockets.
They're smart rockets. So the defense system is earthbound, not space station? That doesn't make any sense to me. None. But we got a comment.
I don't know if anybody's seen the movie yet. If you think about it, there are 3 ships, he fires 4 missiles,
right,
and one of them's gone. And
right,
one of them misses and hits the
Yeah,
space
there's
station.
a missing missile.
There's a missing missile.
We
know probably on its way to the moon.
Well, that comes into your point of what was it aiming at. The 4th one was misfire. Who knows? It
right.
blew up a
the rocket launcher was apparently fire all or none.
Well, he pulled the trigger.
He did for each one. You're right.
So there was some bad technology, but on the plus side, there was some pretty cool technology.
Fantastic technology. The circular drones.
Mm-hmm. That's the spider catchers I'm talking about.
The spider catchers that you're talking about look very similar to actually current technology that we're using now. Was very, very cool. There's a moment when one of the spider's guys, he fires a gun around the corner without looking himself around the corner because he's got a helmet with a view to go there. Modern technology, we're using it now. Very, very cool. He
had a shield.
Kruger. There's 2 moments in the movie when Kruger deploys a shield to avoid getting shot. By the way, they slow the movie down to Matrix time. And at first I was like, why are they doing this? This does not make sense. And then they show the effect of Kruger deploying the shield.
They didn't overdo it though.
They didn't.
No,
That's
they-
what's amazing to me. They slowed it down so that they could show and highlight Kruger activating this energy shield. And what I liked about this shield is it didn't protect him to where he could just stand there and take the shots.
No,
he felt the
force,
kinetic
yeah.
pack, and he fell back. And then they speed it back up after the work.
And
Brilliant effect.
The second time he does it, he's being shot with a much heavier weapon.
Yeah.
And it pushes him into
But he has an
impact.
upgraded armor system as well.
That's true.
So, you
but
know.
they kept true to the physics. that they were
Absolutely.
trying to portray.
I thought it was brilliant. Oh, another fun fact is count the times that you see an Amazon distribution center. I say that funny because Max works in a place that develops robots, and I swear to God, it looks like every photo I have ever seen of an Amazon distribution center. And there's multiple places on Elysium that they enter.
Yeah, and you're wondering, well, they had to get this from somewhere, you know. They borrowed from all these movies. Why not Amazon?
Yeah, exactly. So overall, I don't feel that this movie is completely original. The story idea is borrowed from multiple stories. We've seen them through multiple, most of them sci-fi, I grant you, but multiple stories. We see visuals that are very much borrowed from other places as well. We see bullet time. I hate to use it as that, but that's exactly what it was. We see the slowdown of the camera used appropriately in this manner, unlike Matrix, where they designed it. But we see spaceship designs from other movies. I say that not knowing where they got their inspiration, but for me to look at it,
Yeah, you're like, hey, that looks like one of those.
right, exactly. That looks like one of those. We see technology that is very much borrowed from other things. We see Terminator technology. We see Spider-Man technology. We see current technology.
By the way, Spider-Man also uses the spider trackers.
Right.
And we see a spider tracker.
Right, exactly. Spider threw one.
Spider used a spider tracker. That's the funny part.
The buddy of Max, Spider, who gave him the suit and the means to get to Elysium, planted a tracker on him. It's a spider tracker, absolutely.
Yes, Brandon?
I don't know if you guys are past effects yet because I'm kind of laughing over here. I like the effect I haven't seen in a while. Along with slowing down, they also move the camera in to show one of the main battle scenes of the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
That's another thing that Matrix pioneered. Not only did they slow it down,
That's the 100 camera effect.
but they have the 100 camera effect. It's in a semicircle. Not only did they to me it looked like exact same footage from Matrix, but they used it appropriately.
Yeah.
Whereas Matrix, I don't feel like they did.
Well, they just discovered it.
It was a
You know,
new
they had
technology,
not-
so I get
didn't know
it.
how to do it yet.
But here in Elysium, the camera work was phenomenal, and that's actually what I'm going to give pluses about Elysium. Is the camera work, the cinematography was fantastic. The
production level, the detail that they
detail.
gave,
Oh my
everything.
God! The space station
Fantastic.
itself, when you had the close-up shots, the far-away shots, it looked immaculate. It was perfect.
I think
It was-
they hired a gang to graffiti everything. No, I don't mean that in a negative way. Literally, it looked like, on Earth at least,
Right.
everything was tagged.
Right, because everything was, in shambles and destroyed and gone. And the graffiti that they put on there was, yeah, I get it.
And the details of the ships, and they had, even though we say they borrowed the look, they looked unique enough that, in my
I could
opinion-
overlook it.
Yes, and some of the ships, like the one that I want to keep calling him Clyde.
Carlisle. The Ferrari.
Oh my gosh, I wanted one of those. That's the one I thought looked most like the Emperor's ship.
For the record, this thing, the bad guy, well, I say he's a bad guy, but the guy that Max needed to download information from, Carlisle, he's a CEO of the company that Max works for, whatever. The shuttle that he has is this red Ferrari-looking model that he has, is
Of
able.
the Emperor's ship.
Right, it looks like the Emperor's personal shuttle. Exactly what it looks like. It looks like the Emperor's personal shuttle. It's red. It's got nice flaring on it. It's got housing for a couple of personal robots who come out after it crashes and shoot at Max. But yeah, I wanted one so bad. I actually wanted one of the robots too because another thing I wanted to point out in this movie. Finally, a movie where the robots don't turn against the humans, and they were good robots
and save humanity.
And save humanity. They were.
Well, technically, at the very end, you have Spider, and the robot protected him.
Yes, because of programming.
Yeah.
Because the robots weren't going against Here's what I like about this movie. There's a lot of robots, there's a lot of technology, but it wasn't about technology going bad or against the humans. That's what I liked about it. The robots specifically, every movie you see where robots are intelligent, I'm going to use air quotes, people.
I can see them.
Where robots are intelligent, every movie we've ever seen, the robots go against their creators and their humans. This movie brings that these robots are, in fact, intelligent.
They're very well programmed.
Very well programmed. Yeah. They're very humanistic, I want to say. And you don't see them, going against humanity. They're only being... It's the first movie where I've seen this advanced robotics as not the main character.
Right, the robots were actually robots.
Right, and doing exactly what they should have been. By the way, I think you made a comment earlier. There was a scene when Max had to fight a robot and ended up ripping its head off.
Just a clue, they don't put the main circuitry in the head of the robot in reality. But in the movies, they do that.
Right. I think I put the brain in the crotch. That way, if the head disappears, you're still good to go.
You typically put it in the most armored spot. But whatever,
Well, and that
you gotta have something you can rip apart that people would identify with. Okay, he rips the head off. All right, that makes sense.
I think
go ahead.
Yeah.
Or the foot.
Yeah.
Brandon, you would want to say something too?
No, that's what I say. Wouldn't it be just awkward if they ripped its crotch off?
That does bring up a good point. Let's say he knew where the brains were.
Well, he was in the robot factory. He
Right.
would know right where to
Exactly.
tag.
So if you put the brains in the crotch, that would just be weird.
Then I would have to say they were we laughed about this earlier about Balls Chinian and Aliens 2, not Aliens 2, Men in Black 2, and you had said from Star Trek 6.
That's right. That brought up locations
He
of
hits him in the knee.
that did bring up locations of weird locations for genitals.
Yeah, or in this case, robot soft spots.
Right, robot.
Where's the main core processor?
Right, it's on its left shoulder blade. Why?
So I guess for that matter, the head was good enough. I mean, that makes sense. Go ahead, Brendan.
Also, as you were going with tags, I remember that even the parole officer had tags on his face.
Yes, he did.
Right.
The parole officer had, which, by the way, I want to know that story. Who was the guy that tagged him, and did he get arrested?
Oh yeah, you know he did. Because it's a federal crime to abuse a parole officer.
Right.
We heard for sure.
Oh.
Yes.
I love how Max talks to the parole officer.
Oh yeah.
Well, because he gets fed up.
Right,
He's
exactly.
done.
Or trying to
He's
keep
decided he no
people
longer
like that.
cares. So he's going to mock the parole officer. By the way, the parole officer is an android or a robot or
Whatever, a puppet.
It's one of those-
puppet. Really, is exactly what he is.
It's one of those things from Doctor Who.
It's a
if you're familiar with
Cyberman.
Doctor Who, you know what? And this movie had a lot of little fun moments to discover.
It did.
And I think every person's going to see a little bit of something different. I mean, there's their own reference history.
Right.
They're going to see things that they might
Right.
recognize from something else. But you know what? That's not necessarily bad.
No.
A movie that can pull from a lot of sources and make something
Something.
unique
Right.
is a good movie.
Mhm.
And I think this overall was a good movie.
It was overall a good movie. In fact, I think I want to go ahead and start giving it a rating now.
All right.
There's a couple things going for it. The camera work, the cinematography, the effects were dynamite. Were absolutely perfect. And honestly, I think this is one of the best bad guys I've seen in a long time. Kruger, not Jodie Foster. Kruger was one of the best bad guys in a movie that I have seen in a very long time. I liked him. I was actually rooting for him.
Let me do a quick interruption before we give a rating. Recently, we rated Iron Man 3. You have a similar setup where the true bad guy isn't the initially portrayed bad guy. Would you feel comparison isn't due here?
Well, I don't think that comparison necessarily applies, only because Kruger got mad at Jodie Foster's character. I don't know her name, for the record.
I missed it too.
I don't either. I don't even care.
The vice president of
whatever she was.
Elysium
She
counselor.
discontinued him, Kruger, as an agent. He was mad.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted payback. So I think that makes him a better bad guy for that reason. I think that story is a little bit better, a little bit more solid than Iron Man 3. The bad guy storyline there, the switcheroo that you get, was very well fitted. They very well suited it. I don't like bad guys that are, bad guys throughout the entire movie, but it turns out they're just a lackey of someone else. We saw that in the Avengers, and it made me mad.
Well, we pointed out when we first heard the deal between Jodie Foster and Carlisle, we say, wait a second, why not just set yourself up as the new head guru, in charge of everything? And sure enough, that's what
Carlisle,
Kruger, he takes that. So it's a little bit predictable. However, they had a great take on it by making Kruger the one that acts on it.
Right.
However, so did the good guys. The good guys tried to do the same thing.
And that brings me back to the rating. I mean, we got the camera work, the visual effects, the bad guy, Kruger, but then we start getting into the storyline. You and I were calling out what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I called out that Max was going to die.
I took the opposing viewpoint just to have a...
Right. By the way, it was kind of funny. You actually thought that the little girl of the love interest was actually going to be his daughter. Mm-hmm. They never resolve it.
They don't. And... I initially, because his DNA was somehow coded so that he could get fixed. That was part of the deal he made with Spider. They give him a little wrist embossment of some kind.
Right.
In any case, the thinking was, okay, so if his DNA was coded...
Right. She should be fine.
She should possibly be able to have a switcheroo
But we weren't thinking, because we did hear before that the code itself actually rewrites... all the citizens as citizens of Elysium,
which is at the climax.
Right, exactly. We learned that at there, and it's like, okay. So that's when we called. So the storyline was a little bit predictable for me. They borrowed. We were calling it the entire movie. They borrowed from this movie. They borrowed from that movie. We saw this in that movie. We saw this and this. Mm-hmm. To me, it wasn't necessarily a completely original story. So therefore, for the good visuals, cameras, bad story, borrowed story, borrowed ideas, I think I'm going to go ahead and give it a 2 6-pack rating.
2 6-pack. I'm going to second that.
You are? Really?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll
Write down. Good. Which isn't the bad, really isn't the bad rating for a movie.
No, not at all.
No, because it's honestly on the better half of a bad movie.
I'm going to ask our young audience this with us. Now, S and M here, we've seen a lot more just because we have had time to watch more movies than you guys. For you, I'm assuming that a lot of those references, maybe you haven't seen all of them. What is your opinion? Did you feel this was a unique movie, or did you feel it took too much from other sources?
I didn't necessarily take it.
Go ahead, either one.
I didn't necessarily take technology from just as it did. I didn't recognize a lot of it because I'm not a huge fan of sci-fi, although I love them. Maybe you guys should review Stephen King sometime. I don't know.
Not a bad idea.
I did recognize the story a lot. Even in video games, I've seen the story before. Mm-hmm. If you play Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite are the exact same thing.
He's right.
Just different worlds, except one of them's underwater and one of them's above the clouds.
Let's hear from our other...
I do agree that a lot of this is borrowed, and we were calling it the entire movie. It's like, that's that movie, that's that movie. Oh, that's from that one game that I played a week ago. But it does really have its own sort of unique story, and I did enjoy it.
Okay.
Oh, I would watch it again. Honestly, I think I'd go out and buy the movie and have it, just because it is fun.
It was that good.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was fun. I mean, I have 2 6-pack rating movies in my collection, and I watch them all the time. I think, honestly, a good 2 6-pack rating movie would be The Last Starfighter.
Oh, yeah.
Old classic movie. Not that great of a movie by any stretch of the imagination, but fun nonetheless. And that's how I feel about Elysium.
One final in my opinion, the ultimate dichotomy of two classes, Tale of Two Cities.
Oh my!
Now we're obviously not sci-fi, but
They made a sci-fi remake for it though. In a movie, they actually made a sci-fi Tale of Two Cities.
so it's certainly a story that can be reproduced over and over
Yeah,
again.
and honestly, it makes for a good storyline. But you know, and we actually, now that we brought it up, we're borrowing from this movie, we're borrowing from this story, we're borrowing from this story. Are we running out of story ideas?
You know, there's that old saying that there's only, and there's different thoughts on what the right numbers. There's only 18 true stories. There's only 3 true stories.
Right.
Whatever, you know, and you can argue about which ones are borrowing from others. Any story that brings together characters and a plot truly in and of itself is unique. How much of that, in my opinion, makes you wish you were watching something else or reading something else tells you whether or not it was any good.
Absolutely.
I wasn't wishing I was watching any of those other movies. I
There-
was enjoying this movie.
There was a moment when we kept seeing the shuttle that Kruger was on, the Terminator,
Spacecraft,
the Terminator hovercraft. There was a moment when I was like, I suddenly want to watch Sarah Connor Chronicles. I mean, it was really that.
but not instead of
No. I was like, after this, I think I'm going to go upstairs and turn on Sarah Connor Chronicles.
this.
Exactly.
And to me, that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're wanting to watch the movie to the end, that makes a decent movie. If you have to turn off a movie in the middle of it, honestly, which had we done that with Trancers episode, I don't think I would have complained. But it made for a great episode of S&M on Sci-Fi. So.
If that had made you want to watch Sarah Connor Chronicles, we might have actually turned it off and watched Sarah Connor.
I have an idea, Michael.
Honestly, I think we stuck through it because we were reviewing it.
Well, that's exactly why.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's why we do this. Because believe it or not, Trancers, while it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, I think it was one of the best S&M episodes we've ever done.
It was fun to review.
It was fun. It was fun to rip on the movie. And I kind of want to rip on Elysium. And we kind of did that throughout the movie. The borrowed that for this. It looks like that. It looks like this. But honestly, through all that ripping, yeah, it was good. It was fun. So, anyway, to recap real quick, 2 6-pack rating.
2 6-packs.
For me, it was the visuals, the camera work, and the bad guy that really made it. The story, borrowed ideas, borrowed designs, kind of ruined it for me. So it wasn't, up to the 0 6-pack rating for that reason. So
I really love the production detail.
Details, yeah.
You could watch this movie and just look at a lot of different stuff, and there's a lot to take in, and that's fun. I don't want it too busy, but at the same time, I don't want it plain.
Right.
And I thought that I'm going to agree with you on the special effects. They were great. The
Great but borrowed.
Yeah. Yes. But, you know what?
It's kind of a fine line you walk there.
I recently watched Ender's Game. You asked me some of the things I'd say.
Yeah.
You're inside a spaceship, whether you're inside one of the spaceships from Aliens, or you're inside, a spaceship from Star Wars, or you're inside a spaceship here on Elysium. They're kind of, they're walls. Even the movie, the live action, The Incredible Hulk.
Oh, yeah.
Which had that underground layer.
Yeah.
You're inside metal walls. I mean, there's only so much you can do with inside metal walls and lighting. And, half of this movie, or not half, a portion of this movie was inside Elysium. And, what can you do with that? We said we saw Amazon Studios. Or distribution centers.
That's exactly what they look like, though.
How much reimagining is there of the inside of a spaceship? You're inside a spaceship.
I will say this real quick. I wasn't going to, but I'm going to now. That as far as design of the space station, the atmosphere, the outer ring, where all the livable structures were literally open to space because the atmosphere
was held in
there. They didn't need an enclosed structure. And the funny thing is, I didn't think about that until they showed me on this movie. It's like, well, of course. spin the circle, get a centripetal force, the atmosphere is going to stick to the ground as it should. It makes complete sense to me. You don't need to enclose the outer ring. I thought it was brilliant.
I had two thoughts on that as I was seeing it develop. Number one, first thing I thought was it's open because they're going to have something fly in, and they did. But given that, and I checked myself on saying anything while we were watching it, because if I were a rich SOB on Elysium, I would want an open roof. and honestly, we're rich people that want big open vistas, right? And that's what they gave them. And so it made sense, and so I let it go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes,
You're thinking it was a financial move rather than a design move.
Go ahead.
So when we were looking, we had a lot of views of the citizens of this thing. Did we actually see the sky from in it?
We did.
Did they ever pan up?
Yeah, they did.
A couple of times.
And
They showed the
it was
ships
blue.
coming in.
And it was blue.
Yeah.
As it should be, based on what the air is. But anyway, we got one last comment, and I think we're going to end it after this.
Also, this was mentioned earlier while we were watching the movie, or while we were reviewing, I don't know, but while they're inside the houses in their med bays, is that what they called them?
Yeah.
The med bays, yeah.
But where were all the people?
Right.
Like, there has to be people somewhere. Was it like
Two
the
separate
state?
scenes, we saw a break-in of homes on Elysium. At no point did we ever see the homeowner.
They were near the pools.
That's right. There's a pool party going on at all times.
But by the way, there's only in any given house, there's only 5 people. 3 of them are hot women in bikinis, and then 2 guys. Go figure.
Right, it's Elysium, man.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is. And honestly, I think I'd go. but anyway, that's neither here nor now. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. This is S.
And this is M.
And S&M on Sci-Fi. Come check us out at smsci-fi.com. Thanks so much, guys.